All right. So on this video, I want to talk about, or I guess on this podcast, since I will be uploading it to audio only locations as well. Want to reach as many of you Americans as I can. But on this episode of the Producing Half podcast by your host Thomas, I want to talk about the American culture. And the American culture from a lower class American, an American who grew up poor and had to work my entire life. Didn't have a proper upbringing, however, whatever that means. But just kind of a working class American culture point of view on America and the rest of the world. And, it's really for, of course, my children, so they have some semblance of my views and my culture, although, my boys, they live with me, so they know what I think about everything because I'm not shy. But, my daughter, again, as I mentioned in the intro, with the poor sound quality, I bought a mic off of Walmart for $30. Apparently, that's not what you do when you're making a podcast. Anyways, so we're going to talk about the American culture from the working class American's point of view. Let's get to it. The first question you got to ask yourself, or what I ask myself, is what does it mean to be an American? What is the American culture? And so for me, it's hard work and individualism and integrity, doing what you say you'll do. Well, that leads to something else. In life, and I didn't make this up. I read this when I was like 15. Somebody gave me a book. It was like, I think it was called like Uncle Eric books. Not 100% sure on that. But I remember he gave me two volumes. One was Whatever Happened to Justice, and I think that was the title. And the other one was Whatever Happened to Penny Candy, maybe? They were very easy reads. They were made for teenagers. I was probably 15, 14. For whatever reason, don't ask me why, this grown man who had a career took interest in me strictly honorably. Nothing happened. I don't know why my parents let me hang out with a grown man when I was 14 or 15 years old, because 9 times out of 10, that is not going to end well. Plus, he looked weird. But he was successful. I think his dad owned an oil company or something, but he went out on his own. So he was successful, had money. He taught me chess. He bought me books on chess. Took me to chess tournaments. I mean, like, my parents let me, as a 14, 15-year-old, with somebody they never met or knew, let me drive. We lived in Corpus. Let me drive to San Antonio with him. Anyways, he took an interest in me and opened up a whole nother world, a whole nother way of life that I didn't know existed, because we were very poor. My parents would have never bought me a book on chess. And anyways, he gave me some books on chess. He spent a few $100s on brand new books on chess at Barnes and Noble. Took me out to eat a few times. I mean, I spent the better part of, a year or two seeing him, a few times a year, going over to his house playing chess. He had I think he had an ex-wife and a daughter, but I think I might have met the daughter a couple of times. She was probably a little older than me, or my age, I think, probably my age. I don't really remember. It was a long time ago. And he just, was just one of those weird guys out there that does the right thing for the right reason. We wish there were more of us out there like that, for sure. And I'm not one of them. I've got too much of the mind your own business gene. America needs more people need the mind your own business gene, but the people who shouldn't be minding their own business, unfortunately, are. All right, so all of this convoluted story is back to this book I had read called Whatever Happened to Justice. Is probably the book I read it in. It could have been the other one, but it's probably that one. And it talked about the two natural laws. And the two natural laws in this book were basically, they're the laws that always existed. They existed before there was ever a politician. They existed before ever there was a king or a priest or anything. These were the two natural laws that existed on Earth for all of humankind, and they're there naturally. We didn't have to make them up. We didn't have to create them. We really didn't have to discover them, but they were already there. And it's do all that you say you will do, and do not encroach on other people or their property. That's it. That's the two natural laws. And if you govern yourself with those two laws, then you're always going to be, to me, participating in the American culture, but you're always going to be on the right side of right and wrong. If you do all that you say you'll do, if let's go back in time. Let's say I have my homestead and somebody else has their homestead, and that farmer comes over to me and he's like, hey man, my field, I have a lot of this hay that needs to be whacked down and made into hay bales. This is before tractors in my make-believe scenario. And can you go over there and do that? And in return, I'll give you some eggs for my chickens. So you do that. You go over, because you said you would, you go over to that farmer and you whack down that field with your sickle or whatever it is you used back then. I used one of those. My parents were mean like that. You bale up that hay for him, and when you're done, he brings you some eggs, as he agreed. That's do all you say you'll do. Do not encroach on other people on their property is simply, you don't mess with people. You don't hit people. You don't touch people. You don't do anything to somebody you're not supposed to, or their property. You don't take something that doesn't belong to you. Those are the two natural laws that have always existed, and we should all follow in every aspect of our life constantly. And then, so that's to me the core of American culture. And then, the individualism, the hard work, and the integrity and honor. Honor is extremely important, being very honorable, doing the right thing when no one's looking, doing the right thing when you have all the power and you don't have to do the right thing. That is an important aspect of what it means to me to be a American, a good American at least. Acceptance is something new, though. So if you go back a little bit too far, a little bit further, there wasn't a lot of acceptance in the American culture. You have to, I think that's like an addition to the American culture, hard work, individualism, integrity, honor, honesty, acceptance. You got to accept people, and you got to accept it in the sense of not oppressing it. You don't have to accept it in the sense of, doesn't mean our society has to conform, or society doesn't have to change. Society doesn't have to change all the way it works. Every aspect of society doesn't have to change to accept something that is a small minority or a small deviation from what society has a norm. I'm a large man. I shouldn't be discriminated against, but nor does society have to make every chair out there perfectly fit my large butt. That's not how it works. You can deviate if you want from what society considers normal, but you can't expect society to completely change how it's going to work for you. But acceptance is extremely important. That society cannot oppress. You cannot oppress things that are outside the norm. If they're not hurting anybody, mind your own business. We're back to mind your own business. If it's not something that is going to affect you or yours or negatively, mind your own business. So society cannot, I think acceptance is the addition to that, and society cannot oppress something anymore. It's not, in our history, we haven't always been that good. And I'll say this probably multiple times from now on, but I don't judge us too much. I don't judge this generation by previous generations. And a few more generations, they'll look back on this generation and think of what kind of Neanderthals we are, and it'll constantly be that way as we evolve. And I guess that's what I was going to talk about next anyways, is that the mistakes of the past don't define our culture today. They just don't. Every few generations we'll look back and judge. That's just how it works as we grow and evolve. Men are still very primitive creatures. I don't think women realize how primitive we are and what goes on in our sick monkey brains. I think we're just a little bit high, we're a little bit above animals on the evolutionary scale, and I don't think women are probably a little further up. They don't realize how primitive and simple we men are. So every few generations, we're going to look back and we're going to be like, oh, Neanderthals. Can't believe humanity act like that. So our culture today is not defined by the mistakes. We can take, the great thing is that we can look in the past and go, hey, they did this right. They did this right. They did this right. Whoa, they screwed that completely up. I want nothing to do with that. And that's it. You just leave it behind. You learn and you grow. You don't own the past sins of your people. I don't own the sins of my grandparents. I had nothing to do with that. I don't even own the sins of my parents. And there's a lot there. But you don't own the sins of your past, your ancestors' past. You own your own sins. So I don't judge Americans' culture. I know some people will look back at the things that America did over the last few hundred years, 200 years, and, with the Indians and slavery and everything like that, and they'll be like, oh, the American culture is garbage. Well, no, we've grown. America is the greatest nation on earth for a reason, and it's our culture, and we're growing. We're getting better. We'll just leave the bad stuff in the past. We acknowledge it. We learn from it. We grow from it, and we move on, and we're just better people because of it. Because we looked back and saw what horrible things we did, and we grew. So you should never, in the same vein as that, you should never give power or control of those who would try to lay blame on you today for the past. I'm not saying your past. I mean, you have to own that in however way you need to own it. But the past of our culture. You can't lay what happened in Vietnam or World War II or World War I or the Civil War or slavery or the American Revolution or what we did to the Indians, Native Americans. You can't, you can't have somebody today can't lay that blame on you. It's just not how it works. You had nothing to do with that. And we've grown as a people, and we look back to it. We write it down in our history books, hopefully correctly. And we acknowledge it, we read about it, and we say, yep, I'm glad we're not like that anymore. Let's never go that way again. So don't ever give anybody don't let people lay blame on you for the past. That's not acceptable. If they try, you can try to engage them. But people like that are probably not worth engaging. It's just, they're not. A lot of people, the whole reason I'm doing this video is because I want my culture to be passed along to my children. And I want to share my culture, I guess, with all of y'all for whatever crazy reason y'all would possibly be listening to this or watching this, is that I want to pass on my culture. And there's wanting your children to, wanting your culture to still exist for your children and your grandchildren is not a bad thing. That is not. Protecting your culture. Well, to me, a culture is what defines a nation. It's what defines a people. It's what brings them together and makes them a coherent, force to go out and try to conquer the world. When I say conquer, I meant like, the environment and building houses and feeding your family and, taking care of your neighbor, just those type of things. It's your culture that allows you to associate with each individual, know that you are going to come at things in a similar way because you have a similar culture. So that's very important that you pass on to it's okay to want to pass on your culture to your children. And your grandchildren, you want it to still exist. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm glancing at my notes that I very efficiently typed in. American culture is very unique in what we were able to accomplish. There's always more to the story. There's always nuances. There's always, we got lucky here, we had advantages there, or, territory, the fact that we're isolated from any major power. We had, huge area, pretty easy living kind of situation as far as the lands. Yeah, there's always nuances, but what America was able to accomplish, what we've done in this world, I look at other places that have similar natural resources, that have similar lands, and I look at what they have accomplished and where they're at and the fact that they would give anything to be here. And I try to think, what's the difference? Why isn't their place just as nice as ours? They have the same resources. They have, the same type of lands or the same this or the same that. There's always some nuances. There's always some differences, but for the most part, they have what we have. So why aren't these places America? And I fall back to us, the people here in America, the culture, the Americans, back to our hard work, individualism, integrity. Throughout my life, I've met two types of people. One type of person, they see somebody who's getting who's becoming successful, who's done something, and they're getting rewarded for it, and they're jealous. And then there's the other type of person who looks at that person and they're like happy for them, like, all right, he worked hard, he deserved that, he should get that. And that type of person is the type of people I try to associate with. That's how I am. I mean, obviously everybody gets jealous, and I'm not perfect, but I mostly look at everybody's success and happiness and think, good for them, they earned it. So our culture, to me, is the biggest reason that America is where we're at as far as success in the rest of the world. I mean, there's other countries, and these countries that aren't as nice as us. I mean, you can argue that there's other countries that are subverting their interest. There's foreign actors. America is doing things itself to some other countries to make sure that they don't have such great outcomes in their society. And yes, there's always nuances, but on a whole, America is America because of the American culture. That's why we are. I mean, just look at what our country has accomplished. Look at our poor. Our poor are wealthy compared to most of the world. Our poor, and I've been poor. I've been as poor as you can get when I was a kid, living with my parents. Homeless, you name it. I've been poor. But for the most of my life, I still had a place to live of some sorts. There was times when we were, we were living in a shed or something, and we didn't have electricity or running water, but those were brief. For most of my life, even when we were poor, we had TV, we had a TV, we had electricity, we had a phone of some sorts. It might have been the old rotary kinds, but we had one. And most of the poor I know have cars. They have cable TV. They even have air conditioning. Not all of them. I have some relatives in Kentucky. I've been there, and they give me a whole nother view of poor. So yeah, there are some true poverty, but if you just look at our waistlines, we're doing pretty good as a country. And we do, for the most part, the American culture spreads freedom, and it spreads prosperity. Wherever we go, if you ignore what we do to some countries, for the most part, America spreads freedom and we spread prosperity. We bring up the standard of living for the entire planet, the American culture does, and the things we've accomplished. The world is much better off because of our culture, in my humble, uneducated opinion. I like how I make hand gestures, and most people who are listening to this can't see them. And when you're thinking about our American culture, speaking of, the things our government does, you're not the government. You're not the government, and you're not the media. You're not the universities. You're not the woke left. You're not those things. You don't own those things, and they don't define the American culture. what our government does in some countries that we all look at and we're like, ooh, wow, I don't know if we should be throwing those bombs in that school over there, or I don't know if we should be destroying those hospitals or whatever it is. I'm not getting into specifics here, but you know what I mean. Um, you don't own that. That's not part of the American culture. That's in spite of the American culture. That happens, in spite of. That is not what it means to be an American, and that's not the American culture. You don't control the government. And the craziness we see in the media, the things they focus on, the insanity that goes on the news, that's not the American culture either. You don't own that. You're not responsible for that. That's not your sin. That doesn't define what it means to be an American. And nor like the craziness that comes out of the universities these days, the progressive leftist policies or the ideas and the critical race theory and all that. That is not what it means to be an American. It is the sleeping right that allows that to happen. The fact that I heard somebody say this once, I read this, or somebody said it. It said that the difference between the left and the progressives and the conservatives is that conservatives are just progressives at the speed limit. And I thought that, you know what, that's right, because what conservatives are fighting for today would have been a radical left policy 50 years ago. Probably not even 50 years ago. So that to me, that is true. But those aren't your sins, and those aren't your responsibilities, and they don't define the American culture. I go back to the two natural laws. Do all that you say you'll do. Do all that you say you'll do, and don't encroach on people on the property. That defines the American culture. The hard work, the individual integrity, and honesty, and the honor. You can't. Like I said, the ridiculous media and woke university. That's not a strike against the American culture. What the American government does in these foreign countries is not a strike against the American culture. The American culture is one of the. I'm not saying that there aren't other good cultures. I don't know. I don't live in those other cultures, so there may be good cultures over there. But I live in America, and I see a lot of cultures. I live in South Texas, so I see a lot of diverse cultures here. I've experienced a lot of diverse cultures, and the American culture, the American way of life, our value system, what defines us as a people, to me, is the best. I want my children to experience that. I want my grandchildren, hopefully, to experience that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no sin there. There's nothing to apologize for that. And we as a people of the American working class need to do more to preserve our way of life, our culture. And this has nothing to do with the color of one's skin. Do not let anybody tell you that. It has everything to do with values, what's on the inside of somebody, what they find important. Back to the two natural laws. That's what's important. The exterior appearance of someone is meaningless, and do not let anybody equate those two things together. This is what the American culture means. It's you don't like these people because you're American culture. That's not what it's about. American culture is about what's on the inside, your integrity, what you believe, your honesty, your hardworking, your individualism. That's what it means to be an American. And as we go through all these podcasts, and as I get a little bit more organized, and as I get better technology, so it's a better quality, and I get the website up, you can go to the website, theproducinghalf.com. It's horrific. I'm 46 years old or 47. Man, I really need to figure that out. I was born in 74 in December. Somebody let me know how old I am. But I'm trying to teach myself HTML and CSS and Bootstrap and hosting on a website, and at the same time trying to learn how to make a video for YouTube and upload a podcast to all the various podcast servers, and all of that at the same time feeling embarrassed and ridiculous that I'm even doing this. Who would want to listen to me? So I just keep telling myself this is about me growing as an individual. Hopefully I'll help some other people grow and learn, but I'll have something that my children can listen to and learn from, and maybe even my grandchildren one day. You never know. Once something's on the internet, it's there forever. So join me in future episodes. I've already got some more planned out. I haven't outlined them like I outlined this one, and hopefully the shows will get longer and in more depth. And as I figure out the technology, I'll have more interaction, and you'll be able to see more, and we can have things on the screen and such. So we'll grow, and I'll get better audio quality. I got a little mic here pointing at me. So like I said, it was $30 at Walmart. And a little web camera on the computer screen, and I'll figure out lighting and everything like that, and we'll just we'll figure it all out together, and we'll all grow together, and we'll spread the American culture and the American way of life, and we'll look at current affairs and politics, and we'll see what we can figure out, how we can figure out this craziness. I ain't got time. I work for a living. This is a lot of my free time. I'm off on the weekends, but I put in 10 to 12 hours days during the week, and it's hard for me to pay attention what's out there. I don't have cable TV. I don't. It's a waste of money. And, I don't make a lot of money. It's a waste of money, and it's a waste of time to watch what's on TV anyways. You find yourself just flipping from channel to channel, and then all of a sudden 2 hours has gone by and you haven't accomplished anything. So I don't have a lot of time. So it's hard for American working people, the workers, to know what's really going on, because if it's on the TV, it's not true. All that has an agenda. All that is there for an agenda. I'm not talking about a conspiracy. It's just agenda. Trump should have stopped saying fake news. It's not fake news. It's agenda-driven news. Learn that phrase. Super important. No matter what channel you're watching, there's an agenda there. Whether it's Fox or CNN, there's an agenda. They have an agenda. Have you ever seen that YouTube video where they play, they'll take like 30 or even 100 different TV stations all throughout the country, and they'll sync them up and show you that they're saying the same thing. It's because they're all owned by big corporations, and those are all owned by individuals that have an agenda. You can filter them back up, and you've got people who have an agenda that they want to get across. And so all the news you consume it's tainted by some sort of agenda. And so it's hard to know what's right and what's true and what's going on out there. So hopefully together we'll be able to look at the current affairs. We'll be able to look at the politics of the day. We'll be able to look at the news of the day and look at it with, a filter towards, the American culture of do what you'll say you will do, and, don't encroach on other people on their property, and a healthy dose of mind your own business. It's very important. Mind your own business. Stay in your lane. I hear that a lot. Stay in your lane. But, together we'll try to do our best, and, maybe we'll figure out a way to keep the American culture alive, even though it's just under attack everywhere. Maybe we'll figure it out, and we'll be able to do something about it. So future podcasts are coming soon. I just have to figure all this out, and we'll get it going. So I appreciate you watching this, and I will see you soon. Thank you very much.